Hello, this is Coach Aaron Saft in the Running is Life podcast. Today's guest is Tim Nooney, a professional athlete for La Sportiva. La Sportiva was also my first trail professional sponsorship and contract. So we talk about what it was like for me back in 2008 to what it's like for Tim now in 2024. 16 years have passed and quite a bit has changed in the face of our sport and how sponsorships work. So this conversation is just an in-depth dive into those things and what it looks like behind the scenes. So I hope you enjoy our conversation. And when we finish, I will talk to you after the episode and catch you up on everything in the world of running is life. All right, Tim Nooney's with me here. Tim, how's everything today?
Things are good. It's a beautiful spring morning here in Nashville, and yeah, can't complain. How about
Awesome.
you?
Yeah, just same. You can see by the Zoom, I've got the sun shining in my face and just enjoying the beautiful view out my window. So no complaints on my end. Tim, yeah, I would say when did you sign your contract here with Sportiva? When was that?
August.
It
August
was
of
August.
2023, yeah.
Okay. So Tim signed a professional contract with La Sportiva, and that's going to be kind of the topic of our conversation today, as well as a few other little things. But Tim, just to kind of give the audience just a little background, a snippet of Tim Nooney, would you please just kind of introduce yourself, where you come from, and your background?
Yeah, so my name's Tim. I showed up in Asheville about 2 years ago now, pretty much on the dot. We moved here in like April 1st of 2023 or something like that. Um, and before that, I kind of bounced all around. Originally grew up in New Jersey and Maryland. But I'd been living out in Colorado for the past 5 years, kind of bouncing back and forth between a couple different jobs and also a couple different passions. So yeah, I took a break from running for a couple years, and then once I moved to Asheville, um, I'd always wanted to do Hellbender. It was on my list in 2020, and with COVID happening, it didn't work out. So it was a good reason to kind of like put my toe back into running, and it's kind of snowballed from there.
That's awesome. When did running start for you?
Running started in probably seriously like 2017, 2018, when I moved to Colorado. I was kind of like really focused in on climbing. Um, Before that, I was just like very excited about like big alpine days and big days in the mountains, but the objective risk factors kind of made me reassess and switch over to running because I could still have big days, but it wasn't as intense.
Yeah, yeah. And where did you grow up with climbing? Where did that start?
Climbing started at the beginning of college. My cousin Travis had always been like a huge role model of mine, and he was a big climber. So I knew once I went to college, I'd have like I'd go to a school that I could go climbing.
Okay.
Um, and so I just kind of got into it once the climbing gym opened up at the school, and then we would spend every weekend driving 3 hours to the New River Gorge.
And where did you go to college?
I went to college in Frostburg, Maryland. It's in like
Okay.
the Panhandle,
Yeah.
like right on the border of West Virginia.
And what did you study?
Psychology and philosophy.
Okay. And what are you doing nowadays for profession?
I work in public relations, like outdoor industry marketing.
Okay. Right on. Right on. And what brought you over to the East Coast again?
Yeah, family, really.
Yeah.
We wanted to be a little closer to family, and wanted to see if the East Coast would like work for us. And Asheville, we were looking at trail maps, we were looking at like topography and all that sort of stuff, and it was like the only place that still gave us access to everything that we love, but also was still close enough to drive to go meet up with our folks.
Yeah. Nice. Awesome. And you and I kind of talked about your first 100 was High Lonesome, which everybody knows I'm going to try to attempt this summer myself. But what got you to that point? What got you to wanting to do a 100 miler, let alone High Lonesome?
Yeah, that's a great question. Carbondale's a weird town. I don't know if you've ever been,
I've not
but
been to Carbondale, no.
it's just like this tiny town. At the time, I think it might have had like one or two stoplights, but it's like blossoming now. But uh, in that town, it feels like everybody's run 100 miles. So it's like not that unique. And it's like, oh, getting into running was like I liked the longer days out. And yeah, I did like a 50 mile before that, and then was just
Nice.
like I always knew that I wanted to go check out 100. I wanted to see what like running for a day felt like. So I picked that one.
And what year was that?
That was I think it was 2018 or
Okay.
2019. Um, it was the year right before they went into the lottery system.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Right on. So you started 2017 and by 2019-ish you were doing 100 already.
yeah.
Well, when it's commonplace, you don't think it's strange.
Yeah, you don't think it's strange. And I was used to like 17-hour days just from the climbing objectives I was doing. It's like we
Yeah.
would have 17 miles and then climb like 12 pitches and then like be back at the car at like, I don't know, 8 p.m.
And how did Hilo go?
Oh, it was sick. It was really fun. I went out way too hard, turning into, I don't know, a personal brand that I'm trying to get away from. But uh yeah, I loved it. I think the single track up to Laws Pass is one of the prettiest stretches that you'll do.
Awesome.
In the back end, I had to walk pretty much the whole Colorado Trail
Okay.
just because I was I just ran too hard in the beginning and was just kind of like limping it in towards the end. So
Oh.
a lot of lessons learned there.
Right. And you did Hellbender. You won Hellbender, which was fantastic. What number 100 was that?
Mm, I guess that would be the third 100.
Third 100. Okay. And what was in between the two?
White Rim Road.
Wait, I'm not familiar with that one. Where's that?
Yeah, so it's not a race or anything, but
Okay.
it's just 100-mile loop out in Canyonlands of Moab.
Yeah.
Um, and so you just like stay on the rim of Canyonlands.
Mm,
And it was in 2020. I had like a pretty beefy race schedule. I was planning on doing Hellbender and going into Bigfoot. But with COVID happening, it didn't really all pan out. So I needed something to work on. So I
Yeah.
decided it was going to be the White Rim.
Okay. So obviously from your result at High Lonesome to your result at Hellbender, there was quite a bit learned. And I'm always interested in kind of sharing what those lessons were. So what were some things if you think upon, it could be training, it could be nutrition, it could be multiple lessons, but what were some of the takeaways that you took from High Lonesome and applied to have success at Hellbender?
Yeah, I think the three things that immediately jump out to me is in High Lonesome, like nutritionally, um, definitely adding electrolytes in and making sure that you're getting the electrolytes in if you're going up to high altitude, because
Hmm.
High Lonesome's average altitude is like 10,600 feet. You don't really go much below that,
Right.
except on the Colorado Trail. And so I was drinking water and I was drinking carbohydrate mix. I was not doing too much electrolytes. So on the back half,
Excuse me.
probably yeah, like 50 miles in, I just started like I don't know, like peeing a lot, like every like 30 minutes or so. And it was I just couldn't figure out what was going on. And I was taking salt pills every once in a while, but I was really only taking like 200 milligrams when I should have probably been up in the like 1,000 milligrams or more. Especially after some of the testing that I've done recently. So that was the big technical takeaway. Um, the other thing is just like starting at a sustainable rhythm. I call it like infinity pace. There's a bunch of different little terms that people come up with, but like just starting at the pace that you think you're going to hold for the average amount of time rather than trying to have these like big spikes in speed or like crush a climb or something like that. Like it's not a good idea to go out and try to go crush up Antero or something like that. And then the last thing is like more like the reasons why you do the races.
Mhm.
If you don't feel a connection to a race and you don't feel a passion for the course or the area or like some sort of thing that will like drive you forward, when it gets hard and you have to like go to the bottom of your toolkit to like find something, like chances are there's not going to be anything substantial there. So what you're going to end up sacrificing isn't going to be worth it in the back end. So it just becomes really hard if you're not passionate about the course, which is kind of what I learned from White Rim Road. It was just like, wasn't really passionate about the course. So when things got hard, I didn't have any like big romantic goal
Mhm.
in my head or like idea that I could like lean on in the hard times. So I ended up just having to just kind of use whatever I had in there. And it resulted in like me taking 2 years off of running after that. I was just kind of over it.
That's fair. What reignited that?
Um, I think just being in Asheville, getting a taste for the trail running community here was really kept me coming back. And also I love to like have just a working map of the area in my head. I
Yeah.
felt like I had a pretty good idea of like Carbondale and its surrounding areas from the 5 years that I'd been there, but being so new to Asheville was kind of like, oh, cool, like I can explore this place and like make this mental map. And also, um, I was really fired up about Hellbender since it'd been like a long time goal anyway.
Cool. Yeah. And when you were in Hellbender and you mentioned your toolbox and the connection with the course, was there anything else when you had to dig down into that toolbox that you found that helped you pull you through Hellbender? Did you have any other connections besides to the course itself?
Yeah, I mean that day was just like magical for me. It was just like a really amazing narrative. I had my like whole family come down. My
Nice.
girlfriend was there supporting and like not only that, but I had like some really close friends pacing. Like it was just like all of the community stuff. Like I would come into aid stations and see people I knew and like um I started the race like well and I strategized well the whole time. So everything was just kind of like narrativistically like working itself out. And then like the biggest factor was yeah, I just knew Jonathan.
Mhm.
And like we'd ran together just like once, but like we were fast friends. And then from there it was just like, yeah, I mean the fact that he was anywhere from like 12 minutes to 30 minutes behind me, just like honest the whole day. Like there was never a time where I could like take my foot off the gas. And like the one time I did, I heard clapping behind me and I was
Oh
like, oh
God.
man, I gotta go.
Absolutely. Oh, that's great. You also mentioned some recent testing. What did that entail when you talked about your electrolytes?
Yeah, so one of my sponsors is Precision Fuel and Hydration.
Hmm.
And they are really, really focused in on sweat testing. So, I basically got a sodium concentration test, where I got electrodes placed on my forearm and it simulated my sweat glands and they calculated how much sodium I'd lose per hour, like what the concentration would be, not
Okay.
necessarily like the volume of sweat that I'd lose per hour,
Sure.
but just the concentration. So, really helps to dial in nutrition planning, especially for like A races and stuff like that and training. So yeah, just walked away with a couple strategies on like what my daily intake should be, what my like racing intake, and then when I'm coming up to like a big crux climb or something or a really hard section, what the like overreaching goal would be. So it's just like when you load up a little bit more on sodium just because you're going to be sweating more.
Sure.
You're
Yeah.
working hard.
And precision hydration, they're very obviously detail oriented in figuring out how much sodium you should be replacing. Is that something that's readily available to the public, or what is it? How does that work?
Yeah, totally. They have sweat testing centers kind of all over, mostly in Boulder, which made it real easy for me since I was just there. But in the southeast, there's one in Nashville and one in Raleigh. So it does take
Okay.
a little bit of a drive, but they are open to the public. I don't quote me on prices, but I do think it's like $200 for the session, but you walk away with like a very, very tailored plan. I was just impressed by it. It was like you walk away with a tailored plan on all sorts of types of nutrition. Like it's not just the brand's nutrition.
Hmm.
They'll like if you're a Spring user, if you're like a Martin user, if you're a Goo user, they don't care. They're just like, okay, cool. Like we just look at the nutritional facts and then we build out the plan from there. So it's like,
That's cool.
yeah, it was super fun.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Very cool. Okay. Um, so, with your climbing background, um, I imagine you had used La Sportiva previously.
Yeah, I've been La Sportiva fanboy for quite some time. They've kind of been a favorite of mine ever since climbing. Yeah, my first pair of shoes was like a pair of La Sportiva Solutions, which I
Hmm.
don't know if you or your listeners are super into climbing, but they are very aggressive shoes to start out with.
Right on. And it was La Sportiva, is that your first footwear sponsor?
First footwear sponsor, yeah, first
Okay.
first sponsor, really.
First sponsor. Okay, right on. And how did that come about?
Um, it was a mix of showing off like athletic achievement and working relationships on the back end.
Hmm.
So I had some friends in the industry who invited me to just like an activation because they were in town and I hadn't seen them in a couple of years. So it was more so just like an opportunity to connect with a friend and like hang out. But at that time, like we were running with a lot of the members of the brand and the people who worked on the brand side, and they just got to know me at that point. So I was really lucky and fortunate to have that opportunity. Um, and so from there, I got onto their gear tester program just as like a friend of the brand.
Hmm.
And after the Hellbender result, I just kind of continued the conversation and was just like, hey, like, I really love what you guys are doing. I think the Southeast is such a perfect market. These shoes are like perfect for the terrain. Would you guys be interested in pursuing a conversation about sponsoring me? And yeah, it took probably like I'd say 6 months to get that all kind of like off the ground. It kind of started in April and then didn't really come to fruition until like maybe 4 months. Didn't April to August is when I finally signed.
Okay. All right. And for those that aren't familiar with the term, activation event, you're talking kind of like a demo run or demo
Yeah,
event.
so it's a loose term that blankets a lot of different things, but in this instance, it was kind of like a business to business, like dealer retailer relationship run to where people could test out some of their newer products in anticipation for the upcoming season.
Yeah. And now, when I started, La Sportiva was my first official footwear sponsor as well. Um, we had a team manager, and people might know Buzz Burrell, the gentleman
Hmm.
from the FKT website. He was our team manager at the time. And having the store, the FootRx at the time, um, I connected with Buzz on, carrying La Sportiva footwear, and then he found out about my individual running, and that's how our relationship started. Is there a team manager for you all?
Yeah, yeah. Kelsey is our team manager. No longer Buzz, but I've heard he was fun to work with.
Yes, incredibly.
But yeah, we have a team manager, and they have like a network inside of La Sportiva that kind of works with events and then independent reps and stuff like that that we kind of communicate with as well.
Okay. Um, Ours actually was a package deal. We received multiple companies sponsorship with La Sportiva. So, for instance, when we started, we would receive La Sportiva footwear and then their kit, and then we would get Nathan. We could
Hmm.
select product from Nathan. Petzl sent us headlamps.
Okay.
First Endurance gave us nutrition, and Jewel we had Jewel glasses.
Oh, right
Um,
on.
so
That's a
yeah,
pretty solid
yeah,
package.
it was a really sweet sponsorship package. Is it just La Sportiva on yours?
Yeah, so it is just La Sportiva on mine. There is all sorts of things that go into it, but it's really focused on like highlighting the brand specifically.
Right
So
on.
I'll be wearing
Yeah.
their kit, I'll be wearing their shoes. If you
Mhm.
see me in the climbing gym, I'll be wearing their kit, I'll be wearing their shoes.
That's fantastic. Um, have you met Laban? Have you met Laban from?
Oh, I love Laban.
Yeah. So I just ran most of Heartbreaker with Laban, and he was talking about the same. You know, he is more of a brand ambassador for climbing and running, as he put it. There's different levels to sponsorship, right?
Mhm.
So, can you kind of give us what that looks like, what that deck would look like, so far as like the entry level ambassadorship, if you're familiar with it? I'm not sure how familiar you are with there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm just going to speak more generally
Sure.
than anchoring it to exactly what Lospo does, but
Mhm.
essentially, like brand ambassadors will either get discounted gear or free gear in exchange for just being members of the community that identify with the brand. And these guys actually tend to be some of the best putting on my marketing hat right now. Like those micro influencers and that word of mouth stuff tends to be some of the best bang for their buck, for the brand's buck, because it's just like, oh yeah, this person in the community that I trust is telling me like this brand is doing great stuff and I really like it for this terrain. And people are more likely to be like, oh wow, like that's my friend. I'll
Mhm.
check those out. Um, so that's kind of like the lowest tier. And then the next tier up, I'd say, would be like athlete, where you're getting shoes and clothes and all of that. There's a little bit more responsibility on like social posts and promoting yourself for the brand. And then there might be like travel stipend involved there. But then there's like the elite team, which would be the third tier, which is just like actually paid um, athletes. So travel stipend, gear, all that sort of stuff. Those guys, like you're asked to do more the higher up you go. So it's
Mhm.
like graduated responsibility as
Sure.
you start working your way up. Um, so yeah, I think that kind of
Yeah, that's a great
carries.
summarization.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. And what does your responsibilities look like as an athlete? What type of things do they ask you to do in return for your sponsorship?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the time it's just being that member of the community. Like they partner with personalities in a lot of ways. Um, so like being active in the community is always valued. Race results are really, really valued. FKTs are actually valued at the same as race results, just because they're like a wilderness brand, like looking to invite people out into the wilderness.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I've got to race a certain amount of times a year. I've got to post things like 24 social posts or something like that a year. Um, and then sometimes they'll ask me to like go come out for events and activations and stuff like that. So I was just in Boulder for the Athlete Summit. I've done a bunch of events around here just with the independent sales reps. So yeah, that's kind of the majority of it. Writing, I do a little bit of writing for them as well.
Okay.
Just making content for the website. So should have a piece up relatively soon.
Cool. Nice. And then so far as social media goes, when they put out new product, do they ask you to, you know, share their posts or create your own posts based on that product? How detailed does that get?
It's pretty loose, honestly. They want it to be authentic. They don't want their athletes to just have these like La Sportiva branded Instagram accounts. I mean, if you
Right.
go on my Instagram account, I have like not that many followers. Like it's not really the biggest focus of mine. I definitely put way more energy into Strava and like the actual results driven side of being an athlete.
Hmm.
But um, yeah, they want organic posts. If you like a product, like post about it, share it, tell people, but just use it
Hmm.
mainly.
Yeah.
So athletes like the deal is like it's pretty loose. Athletes can show their return on investment however they want, and then the brand can there then like judge it for if it's valuable to them. So it's like it's a lot of shooting in the dark and a lot of like trying to figure out what works and what's valuable to the brand and positioning yourself in a way to not only like increase your deal over time, um, or increase the support over time, but also just like keep the relationship going, keeping it valuable. So a lot of what I focus on isn't necessarily like social posts or anything like that. It's mostly like I really care about the community,
Hmm.
and I try to just show up interpersonally, make relationships, connect people, find opportunities that are kind of all over the place, and um, just create this like stew of something that might turn into something cool at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because as this has evolved, so when I started the words travel stipend and salary did not exist in the trail running world, right? So when I was racing La Sportiva around 2008, and social media really didn't exist. Strava really didn't exist. So it has evolved, and there's a number of things that we could talk about here. But as it evolved, it always seemed interesting that like a lot of companies would ask, well, how many Instagram followers do you have? How many Facebook followers do you have in the application process? But they didn't ask much about Strava, which always it just baffled me because and has did La Sportiva ask you about Strava followers or anything like that?
They didn't ask about any of my followers. I think like through the vetting process, they probably did all their research, like go on my ultrasign app, go on FKT, go on all my social media handles. At the time, funny enough, I didn't even have an Instagram account. I hadn't had an Instagram account for like the past 3 years. I tried to log into my old one,
Uh-huh.
and it just locked me out. Like there was no way I could get back in, so I had to create a new one.
Gotcha. Gotcha.
But yeah, no, they didn't lean too hard on that.
Yeah, it's just interesting because I mean, you could have so many Strava followers, and then it says what footwear you're wearing. You can make posts on there, and it's
Yeah.
just it seems like a platform that's underutilized by. But
It, it's the
but
Wild West right now, especially for Strava. They used to charge like all those challenges and stuff like that.
mhm,
Used to cost like a really pretty penny. I still think they might. So like what you're starting to see with brands is them actually going into using the club feature
mhm,
like way more intensely. I think smaller brands have been really working well with that by like creating challenges and like active engagement. Whereas like some brands are doing more advertisement kind of stuff on there, and you can see like a disengagement with that.
yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. Have you had to use this was a new term to me, a social media ladder?
Ladder, no.
Okay.
Tell me about it.
So this is where Usway and I parted ways. I was using the Usway packs, and um, they came up with this. It was a way of earning more from them, and so they use this platform called a social media ladder. And so what would happen is that they would have different, we'll call them challenges for terminology purposes, but they would have different challenges that were on your dashboard. So you had each runner had their own dashboard, and there was kind of a point system. And by gaining more and more points, at certain level of points, you would gain either more money, more product, whatever it may be. But each challenge would be something within a certain platform. You know, create a YouTube video and you'll get 5,000 points if you include, this product. Or go on Instagram and do a reel. So there was all different ways of doing it and earning points and getting more. People were you can kind of see now that I say that, you can see if you go on the different platforms, you can see who is chasing what points.
Yeah.
But as you said, it was hard to make it authentic and genuine when it felt like they were putting this on you, right? And I'm not, just as you were saying, I'm not a big social media guy. I don't like to post a ton. I don't, especially don't like to post about me. So, it's hard enough. And so that's where we parted ways because I told him, I said, that's just not in the cards for a guy like me. I said, if that's the direction you're heading, I'd rather not. I appreciate everything, but, so but it seems to be more and more commonplace, especially amongst the ambassadorship, that you're asking them to post this many times, include this hashtag, and that's fine. Obviously, if you're good with social media and that's your intention, that's totally fine. I don't judge people for it, but again, I come from the beginnings where the social media wasn't a part of this, right? And it just feels like it's kind of evolved to this, everything's about like social media and trying to get your face out there and your name out there and their name out there. Which good or bad, I just it wasn't a part of the sport for me, and I just I guess I'm more old school. I don't I don't feel the place is right in our sport, right? Like I don't know, it's a little too commercial for me. And trail running never was about commercialism until like I saw the UTMB and I was like, holy cow.
Yeah.
So I don't know how has your experience been?
Yeah, I think paying attention. So like I never knew the term ladder social media, but like I've seen it
Mhm.
before for sure. Especially in the ambassadorship. Like yeah, it's a great way for folks to get some support if they're savvy with it.
Mhm.
Like, oh man, like go for the ride,
Right, right, right. Yep.
I'm really, yeah, it's tough for me. I've been really trying to like craft authentic voice on social media. So I'd probably be in a similar camp as you where it's just like I'm not really sure if this like posting this pack and stuff like that in that way would be right for me. I'm trying to like show up more so. Like I always joke around and say like, oh yeah, I'm just trying to be a little bit of a shithead on online. Sorry for the cursing, but
You're good.
like yeah, I try to make jokes on my Strava titles. I try to like not take it too seriously on social media. Like
Yeah.
if I'm gonna post something, it's gonna just be like tongue in cheek to make it fun. But yeah, it's like my thing is trail running's hard.
Mhm.
Like gear is expensive, the food is astronomical. It's absurd to like think about trying to pay $4 for a gel and like you go on a long run and the nutritional plan is eat a gel every 30 minutes,
Yeah.
that's $8 an hour.
Right, right.
On top of like the carbohydrate drink and like the salt pills that you're probably going to take as well. And like it just keeps on tacking up and tacking up. So it's just like if people can get in on the ambassadorships, I think that's really cool. I think the issue is when the ambassadorships like charge you to be a part of it, or like create some sort of thing where it's not as like community driven, where it becomes a little like, yeah, they're asking more than just gaining these points. It's like some sort of loop where they're just like, oh, we're creating this other like highly engaged customer base. And it's like that's not necessarily what I think ambassadorship should be.
Sure. Um, Another piece of this ambassadorship, sponsorship, is we should, and this comes from, I don't know if you've had a chance to read We Can't Run Away from This by Damian Hall.
No.
Okay. It's a highly suggested reading material for everyone. It's a wonderful book. Damian Hall, he's an amazing athlete from the UK. But he talks about the our sustainability, right? Both, of this world and within our sport, not only on our daily runs, in being minded of how much we're purchasing, what's our consumerism, what is our impact when we travel, all of these things, right? Like there's a lot. And what I've said to, I coach a number of athletes that are ambassadors, is I've said to them, hey, like, how much have you talked to the brand about their accountability within sustainability and, concern for our environment and what we're doing in the production of this product? It's not something we often think of, right? That's not a piece of the pie. And it's why I bring it up is, have you ever had a conversation with them about sustainability practices or what their plans are to be, perhaps more of a green company?
Yeah. And it's really hard to wade through that in the
Absolutely.
brand landscape because there is just a ton of greenwashing that's going on.
Right.
Like brands are constantly trying to identify as sustainable, but it might not actually be the case. So in a lot of ways, one of the easy verifications is just look for like, is the brand 1% for the planet? And then the even more rigorous, is the brand a B Corp?
Hmm.
And those are there. It's not ideal. Everybody's
No,
trying their
no,
best,
of
but
course.
like, and it's like as trail runners, we're not the biggest lever pullers
Yeah.
in
Right.
a lot of
Right.
ways, but it is important to take a gander and ask those questions because it hasn't been part of the conversation in a lot of stuff, and a lot of athletes are just focused on the athletic performance and these aspirational goals.
Hmm.
Um, but it's something that's like constantly on the table. I mean,
Yeah.
with Lospo, it was kind of like I've been impressed by it because it's just like they've incorporated a lot of recycled material into all of their clothes and shoes, which is kind of cool. Probably not so much the shoes, just because you want the midsole and everything to be kind of like
Durability. Yep.
durability and like you want that pop
Yep.
in the midsole. But like the clothes for the most part are I'm not going to say majority, but like each
Yeah.
one of them has like a recycled label on it that has some level of recycled material woven in.
Well, and it's something that Damien in the book kind of says. Well, it's these brands hold the athletes accountable. Damien's a innovate runner. They say you need to do X, Y, and Z, and so he said I turned the tables and said, all right, well then my concerns are for the environment. So what are you doing? How can I hold you accountable? How can I be a part of this brand if you're not holding my values? So everybody has their own values, and everybody goes to their own degree. But the message basically is, if you are involved with a brand, and if you care about the planet and want to see change, it starts with you, right? It starts with anybody that's involved with the brand, and just communicating your concerns. What happens from there is just a conversation, right? And it can lead to other things, which is fantastic. But it doesn't happen unless you bring up the fact that you have concerns, right? That's the biggest message. And like I said, the book is wonderful. It's a fantastic book. He goes a little bit far in in some aspects, and kudos to him for doing it. There's not some things in there I just like, all right, that's a little too much for me, but like I said, it does bring to light a number of things that I was like, oh, well, yeah, I can do that. That's simple enough, so, but, as I said, it's not just I'm not just saying it to you. I'm kind of saying it in general. It's a wonderful book to read and get some ideas from. And if you have that power to communicate with companies, it should be a conversation that is had. So,
Definitely. And I think that brings up a good point of just like, is the relationship with the brand transactional or is it a brand partnership?
mhm,
Because if it's transactional, it's a lot harder to have that conversation. And I think a lot of athletes get really in their head or like anxious about like asking really anything from the brand because it's like, oh man, like I'm on such thin ice here that it's tricky for me to have any leverage. Otherwise, like I might just be dropped into like nowhere, And it's
mhm,
like for me, that brand support is super duper valuable. Um, and I think the best way around it is to like just assess for yourself, is this a partnership or is it transactional? And like shoot for, I mean, if there's anybody looking to be signing brand deals listening, shooting for like multi-year deals is really like the best way for, at least that I've found, to feel confident in being like, this is a partnership. Like we
mhm,
are moving forward together for this set amount of time.
right.
And then I have a little bit more like trust in how I can play around with positioning myself and also like expressing myself authentically. Whereas
Yeah.
if it's transactional, it might be really harder, like a lot harder to open up those
Sure. Oh,
conversations.
totally. Well, and as brand ambassadors, obviously you have money at stake, right? So that becomes a little bit more touchy. I totally understand that. But as brand ambassadors, like they shouldn't be afraid to pipe up, right? Like they've got a year deal with these people, right? And like they're that I, in my personal opinion, the brand's getting so much more out of the ambassadors than the ambassadors are getting from the company. So, with that in mind, let your voice be heard, let them know, like, because there are so many brand ambassadors. Like these companies take on so many brand ambassadors, and each of them, if they raised a voice to hear what they were doing, the companies would start to understand, well, maybe I should be doing a little bit more. It is important to them. And then they would show that value out to the public, which in my mind is just positive, right? Like they're trying to do and make change. So I think people would look at them in a different light. So, like I said, if you are a brand ambassador, let your voice be heard because like I said, you got a year and they may not choose to bring you back on, but at the same time, they may value your opinion and say, hey, you're right. We should be doing more. So, but
I think the
we just,
only other piece there is like, yeah, these brands have partnered with you for a reason. Like
yep.
they could have partnered with a bunch of other people, but they picked you. And like, yeah, I mean, working through that anxiety of just like, should I say something or should I not? It's just like you've already established the relationship. They've already vetted you. So
Hmm.
it's like exactly to your point. And it's
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's worth firing off like a quick email or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's we think about our impact and our footprint. Because when you look at what we do and what footwear in general, what that creates as a carbon print, there's a lot. There's a lot that we do. So I mean, we have to be considerate of that. So, and it's hard too because you're trying to support a brand and they want to sell shoes. That's their point. So it's where do you strike the balance? But yeah, moving on. That's a good piece. I really appreciate you talking about that. But um, you also have gotten into coaching.
Oh, I think I dipped my toes into it.
You dipped your toes.
Yeah, I'm still really interested in it, but I've just got so much stuff going on at the moment that it's kind of taken like a little bit of a
Backseat.
backseat.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fair.
like at the same time I got the La Sportiva deal, I also switched jobs and so I was working in mental health before this, and then I went back into um, outdoor marketing. So that and the race schedule's been slammed. I don't think I'd have time to like give attention to
That's
clients and
fair.
work
No,
for
that's
them.
fair. You got to know what you can do and what you can't do. So yeah, no, totally. That's totally fair. And speaking of your race schedule, You kind of set up, and this is something that I think more runners could learn from, and I really try to harp on this with athletes I coach, is having a season, right? Like having a build to a goal race where it's not just like randomization and you're just going for the whole year, right? So can you talk about that for a moment and just kind of talk about your season? What does that look like? How do you select things, and when does it end? What do you try to go? How long do you try to go within a season? That kind of stuff.
For sure. No, great question. And it is tricky and tough to like find that rest time because there's so many cool events happening all the
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
It's really like you want to race all the time. I try to follow the seasons, especially in North Carolina. Like you're not going to be at your best racing in August and July here. Like
Sure.
you might be in Colorado, like that August, September time. Out west is super great because it's just like long days, alpine, like really beautiful. But here, like you just get bogged down in the heat and humidity. So it's like it's a good time to just like stack up training volume, let the mind kind of just like enjoy running. Still getting workouts in and stuff like that, but like to be in the race head every month is a lot, especially racing ultras. It's like
Hmm.
it's tricky. So typically what I'll do is I'll plan out, I call it early season and late season.
Hmm.
So I'll plan out my early season, which basically runs from January to May or June, and then essentially a couple months off in the summer of racing. I might do like small stuff just for fun, but pick it back up in that like September through November. Like typically I'll race 4 or 5 times in the early season, and then I'll focus on bigger races since I'll have more training volume stacked up um, in the back half. So the way it worked this year is just like it's been a lot of racing these past couple months, and then after Breakneck next week, it will taper off. I might do like some FKT stuff in June, but my next race is going to be Run Rabbit. So I'll have a couple months to just kind of like settle in and prep for that.
What do you feel gets to be too long when you go beyond X amount of weeks? How far out do you like to go in a season before you take a rest?
Um, it's tricky. I just kind of started this back up. I didn't really expect to be racing this hardcore. Like honestly, like after Hellbender, it was just gonna be like, yeah, like I'll race a little bit and kind of figure it out from there. But it snowballed into what it is now. So um yeah, I have my race schedule planned out to the end of 2025 right
Okay.
now. And this year I'm viewing more as a build year of just like, cool, let's get some racing experience because I've really only had like 5 races. And then let's pivot that race experience into more competitive races in 2025. And yeah, so I typically try to I don't know, just kind of race what I think is sustainable and then like take like it's all kind of like estimation.
Yeah.
So 4 months on, 2 months off, and then 4 months on again
Okay.
seems pretty solid for me.
And you have a coach too, yeah?
Yeah, I work with Ryan Anderson out of Knoxville. Yeah,
Nice.
that's been wild to see the
Ryan's
change
great.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Does he do any long-term planning with you? Does he look over? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we came up with it. We have a long-term plan and like short-term goals and process goals and all that sort of stuff. So not only are we training to have like perform well in our AB and potentially C races for
Hmm.
this year, it's also like all of it is in build up towards 2025 because 2025 is going to get really rowdy for me. We're gonna like yeah, we're gonna kick it
Anything you
off.
want to talk about?
Yeah, we're gonna kick it off with Black Canyons, and then transition pretty quickly into Breakneck again.
Okay.
And then from Breakneck, depending on how Black Canyons goes, um, figure out some other A race in June that would either be out in Italy or California or something. And then Leadville
Okay.
into Javelina, I'm pretty sure. I think that's
Wow.
how all is shaking out.
Okay. So Leadville 100 and then Javelina 100 or Javelina 100K.
Javelina 100. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So perhaps chasing some golden tickets, it sounds like.
You got one shot, right?
Right on. So Western States is a goal.
Western States is a goal. It'd be a lot of fun. Mostly it's just that I want to see where I stack up in some of these faster like running races. Obviously, like not obviously, but like my preferred style is just like putting my head down and cranking out beautiful mountain ultras. But I mean, it's Western States.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So, La Sportiva used to do a cup. It was the Mountain Cup race. And
Yeah.
we actually had a race here in Asheville. Well, actually, technically it was Black Mountain, but it seems that the race series concept is starting to rebirth, right? We're starting to get like the Cirque de Dirt and all that good stuff, right? And that's awesome to see. Has there been any talk about La Sportiva, rectifying or bringing back the Mountain Cup? Because that was such a great series.
Yeah. Um, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff happening, especially in the series world. I think that a lot of these people are like starting them up independently, and then brands are jumping on board,
Hmm.
kind of like partner with them. Um, Kind of like Cirque series and stuff like that is what pops into my head.
Yeah.
I think there is a growing interest in like sub ultra kind of short mountain races.
Yep.
So I know that La Sportiva is very open to partnering with event directors and stuff like that to showcase some of like the best terrain and like the best like aspirational use case for their shoes. Um, but I'm not sure anything is right now in the works. So
Right
if
on.
there are any race directors listening who are looking to start some sort of series like that or partner with other race directors who have similar races, I think Lospo is a great partner. You should reach out.
Yeah. Good stuff. Um, I want to be respectful of your time because we've gone over an hour, but you had mentioned SLC trail
Oh,
running.
yeah.
Do you have time to talk about that a little bit?
A little bit. I mean, I don't have anything
Well, first
like
of all, just kind of tell us what it is because you brought it up, and like I said to you, forgive my ignorance, but I wasn't even familiar with with SLC. So why don't you talk about it a little bit?
totally. Yeah, I pay attention to the sport a lot. Recently there has been just a ton of focus on Salt Lake City
Hmm.
and what their runners are doing. And it's kind of this like weird amalgamation of like a bunch of elite runners showing up in Salt Lake or like having lived there for a while. Mostly the people that I'm focused on are the people who have been there for a while and
Sure.
have been crushing.
Hmm.
Um, and at the same time, there have been these media outlets that have been bubbling up, as well as like photographers who are just pumping out really quality content. So a lot of eyes are on Salt Lake City, and it just reminds me of like what Boulder was, or
Hmm.
like during the Coconino Cowboys, like what Flagstaff was. It's just
Hmm.
like this hub of trail running attention, and I think that's raising the level of the sport, especially for athletes there. I think it's creating a bunch of opportunities for people to partner with brands if that's what they're into, or just tell their stories, or start up really cool like groups that are accessible or like reach a different demographic of people. And so just yeah, one thing I always play around with is like my focus is trying to connect folks and like create opportunities and tell stories. And I guess I was just wondering and riffing, like, what would it take for Asheville to like have something like that? And like, is that right for Asheville? Or like, is like raising the visibility here like something that would be good for the community, or like, are is it better for like our folks to like just kind of have our own little thing? Because it's been weird, like it not weird, but it's been tough for brands to really come in and like put a stamp on the Southeast. I don't think
For sure.
there's
Yeah.
been somebody to like really come in and own it. Like if you go
Mhm.
to a group run, you'll see just like all sorts of different shoes and different brands represented. But out west, it's a little bit more like one brand owns a group run or something like
Mhm.
that. So yeah, I don't know. What do you think about that?
So back in the 90s, Brevard actually had a collective of marathoners. We had a number of sub 220 marathoners that trained in Brevard. Keith Brantley being one of them, who was Olympic trials. Actually, he was an Olympic marathon qualifier. And they trained out of Brevard. Randy Ashley, who's still local, he ran 219, I believe. So I mean, we had a collective here. Now they weren't organized by a specific brand. These guys were just, I would just say blue collar runners, right? Like just the true blues that just get out there and hammer every day. And they bought it. Well, I don't even know if they bought a house. They rented a house or whatever it was, but they all lived in the same place and all followed the same training. And they elevated their levels, obviously, by just being together. So, yes, it could work. It could work under one brand or it could just work as a collective, right? And I think that's what the Asheville Collective was really trying to put together. We have a group called the Asheville Running Collective. And not on they weren't really on the trail scene, and nor was the marathon group, obviously, but we have the potential here, obviously, to do something like that. I think, as you said, the West collectively is a lot easier to do it because a lot more people are enticed by what's out west because it's already established, right? There's so many people that go out west. A lot of people want to race out west. Whereas on the East Coast, we have very few races that people are like, yeah, this is like, this is the crowning jewel of of US running, right? Like, obviously the West has Western States, it has Leadville, it has Hard Rock, it has all these great races. Whereas when we come to the East Coast, we have great races, but they're not historically valued like the ones that are out west. So I think we're growing in that piece there. It will take some time for us to kind of get that recognition, but it's not to say that we don't have great East Coast runners. It's just collectively they haven't come together in a kind of team like you're talking about to kind of train together and elevate the level of the East Coast. It certainly could work. It would take, just probably a few people to start, and I think it would grow organically to become something that could be, quite powerful, quite awesome. So yeah, it's something that would happen here. Actually, Shiloh Milky talked about buying a house and creating a professional runner hostel where guys could come and stay and train at a low cost to them that way, because that's the biggest right thing is just the living cost. It's tough, it's expensive. So how do you defer that? How do you make it more reasonable for people? And I think that's a good starting point is having a collective place where people could come and stay and live. So it's stuff that we've talked about here in the community. um I think it could work. It's just going to take somebody dedicated to, like it was the Hansons up in Michigan, right? Like they came and made a great blueprint of how to have professional runners all together, able to live, earn some money, and race professionally. And that's kind of what we see in SLC. The SLC running company. They're doing a great job, kind of bringing and housing some athletes, giving them jobs, but allowing them to train professionally and have success. So it's definitely something we could do here. It's just going to take some organization on multiple parts to kind of make that. There's so many moving parts. So,
Um,
but
and that's why this conversation always like is just like a swirling,
yeah.
like unorganized thing for in my head. It's like I don't necessarily because like the traditional running team, like Tin Man Elite, like
Hmm.
pulled that off in I think they're based out of Boulder, and they did that really well. They were like, okay, cool, we're gonna concentrate this content output around this like hub of athletes, and then we're gonna leverage that into brand sponsorships and stuff and like support so we can go race at the highest level. Um, I'm not sure that model is super effective for trail running. I know the Cowboys did it. I
Hmm.
feel like they had like a house in Flagstaff for a little
Sure.
bit and like
Yeah.
really came out with the content angle. And like the Boulder boys are doing that. Matt Daniels, Seth
Hmm.
Ruling, and Moyes and Adam Mary and all them
Yeah.
are doing something similar. I don't think it needs to be attached to like a specific brand. I think it's more so like you need to if something like that were to work, it would probably need some sort of regular content output.
Hmm. Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's like really a premium product because
Right.
it's just like you're trying to like if you can have eyes on you for like more than 5 seconds, like if you put out like a running Stoker video or something like that, like you're winning. Like
Yeah.
that's like a cool thing. And I think that's like what because like Salt Lake, it's not necessarily like one group, it's just like this dispersed collective of people, but there are like these content creators that everybody's partnering with or
Yeah.
grabbing pictures from or they're
Sure.
telling stories in certain ways.
Right.
Um and I think like more so like what you're doing here is like really cool. Like you're connecting with people in the community, you're raising them up and giving them like some platform to chat about really interesting things. I think there's a couple other like podcasts and media outlets that are doing similar. But something visual and video
Hmm.
is kind of the thing that might be lacking. And like, if
Right.
anybody is a content producer like that, it's well beyond my capacity. But there's
Yes.
certainly a bunch of opportunity here.
Oh yeah. Oh, we have, and they've reached out. I've had content creators reach out about videos and doing stuff to kind of, expound upon what I'm doing. It's an expense though, right? And that's the biggest thing is where does that come from? And it's usually a brand, right? Like Solomon, for instance. Solomon knocks it out of the park. They find a story and they do videos based on that story, right? Like we've all seen Killian's different videos and stories, and we're captivated by it because it's a great story and they do wonderful footage, right? Like, but that's what it takes, right? Is like, if I had the finances, I could create, like, some pretty cool stuff, but that's the big thing is kind of getting the brand behind it. So I mean, like brands like Sportiva and others that have these athletes, that's definitely a conversation for people to have, because that just kind of generates really unique content. But you're right, that's what this would need is that generating it, so it generates the interest so that the brand wants to stay behind it. So yeah, it all kind of comes together. It would take, kind of a mastermind to find all of that, right? Like, the brand that wants to sponsor it, that's the content creator, the social media guru, there has to be multiple heads that all want to come together collectively. And maybe at first it's not that, they're getting paid exorbitant amounts, but as that grows, then everybody grows together. And that's what probably it would take is people that just want to come in at the base level and and grow together. But that's hard. That's really hard. That's dirt bagging it for a while. So it's going to take multiple dirt bags to to make it go.
Totally. Yeah. No, I've talked to some of the folks in the Salt Lake scene, and it is exactly that. It's just like there's a lot of like free work that's happening right now in order to like blow this thing up. And as they're doing it, they're figuring out ways to like monetize on the back end and
Mhm.
like pivot it into something and grow it into something that's sustainable. But yeah, it's a ton of work.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
for
yeah, I
sure.
think and that's where I go into like, oh man, like Asheville's scene is so cool and community oriented and authentic. And it's like, as much as I'm paying attention to it and scrolling through and like following these stories, and I know some other people are, like, I'm not sure that like the entire community is. stoked on it because like I'm a transplant here. I have no say. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Just because I'm paying attention to it and like trying to run quick in certain modalities doesn't mean that I have like an expert opinion on what Asheville should do for
No,
running.
well, yeah, and there's going to be the flip of the coin, right? There's going to be the other side of the coin anywhere, anyhow. There's going to be those contrary to any of that because they want to keep it's secrets. I remember when the mountain bike, there was a mountain biker and he was amazing on YouTube, had like 1 million followers on YouTube, but people were pissed because he was doing filming on trails that people didn't want exposed.
Yep.
They're like, hey, that's like our hidden gem secret. Like, why are you exposing it? And he's like, it should be, there for everyone to use. But again, he was getting haters on, and, well, of course he was getting followers and people that loved it because they're like, oh, that's an awesome place to ride. But then he was getting the local vibe that were saying, hey, like this is some things that there's just some things that should be left unsaid or unshown. So, it's going to come from both sides, and whoever does it or leads it, they're just going to have to expect that. They're going to have some pushback, and you're just going to have to be willing to take that and say, yeah, I get it, but this at the same time, we're trying to do something, and this is our passion. So yeah, it's going to take somebody that's very passionate and, like you said, that doesn't mind doing stuff for little to no money to get it going. And it's if I had time, I would definitely contribute. At the moment, I don't have that time, but
Um,
it's for sure.
well, if anybody's listening to this and is interested in that sort of stuff, my ear's always open. I don't have a lot of bandwidth right now, but I certainly have some and like happy to brainstorm and kind of post a flag somewhere. I'm not really
Yeah.
sure quite where.
Tim, it's been a great conversation, man. I certainly appreciate it. In the show notes, I'm going to include links to Tim's episodes with Facing Vert and Adventure Jogger. He's been on there recently, talks about his running and a lot more about his background. They had covered that extensively, so we wanted to talk more about some other topics that both of us are passionate about. So, Tim, thank you for your time. And if you would conclude by just letting people know how can they connect with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Aaron. It's
Oh,
been
absolutely.
a lot of fun. Um, yeah, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook. Strava is probably where I'm most active.
Okay.
But just at Tim Nooney. And yeah, that's probably the easiest way. If anybody is more of an email person, feel free to reach out at twnooney at
Okay.
gmail. So
All
yeah,
right. I'll put it all in the show notes. Tim, you're amazing. You're doing some awesome stuff, my friend, and I wish you the best of luck at Breakneck. That's what you got coming up next, right? Is that right? Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
next week.
Oh man, coming up quick, dude. Well, have a great time. You keep us posted. I'm sure we'll have you back on because we got a million things we can talk about.
Thank you so much for the time. I'll see you later.
I want to thank Tim for coming on and being open and talking about his contract and what it's like to be a professional athlete and all the things that come around with it. So, Tim, thank you. And I wish Tim the best of luck as he lines up this weekend for the Breakneck Marathon. So best of luck, Tim. I hope you guys are doing well. This this season seems to be extremely busy. The track season, we're getting into championship season here. So as I record this and it releases, the kids will have their conference championships this week. And next week will be the regional championships, which will make the state qualifiers. And then May, that would be the 18th, I believe, will be the state meet. Excuse me, the state meet. And then in June, I think it's June 15th and 16th, they have the national meets. There are multiple national meets. It just depends on what times these athletes run as to where they can go. But like I said, extremely busy time of year with all the racing going on, let alone my own. As we record this, I've got just under a week and a half to Hellbender. My next episode is going to be kind of a pre-Hellbender talk. I was hoping to have on someone for the Forest Service to talk about rogue trails, but I just haven't been able to connect with anybody just yet, and I'm going to keep trying because I think it will be a great conversation and a great piece to hear from. So I'll keep trying to make that conversation happen. But you can bet the next 2 episodes will be kind of Hellbender centric, with Hellbender being next week. As I said, next week's episode we'll talk about pre-Hellbender, what's going on, and pre-race plan, all that kind of stuff. And then afterwards we'll do a recap and talk about how Hellbender went. So I'm really looking forward to Hellbender. Very excited for it. I can't wait to line up. So we'll stay tuned for that episode. Coaching is staying busy. As soon as I opened my mouth last week and said that I'd have some openings, I was asked by a number of athletes for coaching, which is awesome. I was at the film festival and met some new folks, so that actually brought a few people, my services to their attention, which was great. So anyway, that all said, I am limited again on my availability. Don't hesitate to reach out if I have space. I certainly will bring you on board if it's something that works out and you're interested in. But as I said, it's again pretty busy. So we'll stay tuned for that. Well, I guess we should also mention the Flight of the Falcon, the 24-hour event once again. Been trying to push it out there, and seems like we're picking up some steam and some interest, which is great. It's for a great cause. Again, this is money to raise for the West Henderson cross country and track and field teams. We want to build a locker room for these kids. Right now, they have to get changed in restrooms, and they have nowhere to store their gear. We have nowhere to meet. We have to meet outside, and if the weather's miserable, it's just a bad situation. So trying to make it better for these kids, and that's the point of this 24-hour event. So please consider it. It's on Ultra Sign Up. I'll put the link in the show notes. We ask that each participant, on top of the entry fee, raises a minimum of $250, which will go straight to the building fund. I am not taking a dime of this money for myself. This goes all to the program. This is all about the kids. So if you can do it, you're doing a tremendous service to these kids. We have awards for everybody. If you make it 50K, we're doing handcrafted mugs. If you make it 50 miles to 100K, you get the mug and a belt with a falcon embossed on it. And then if you make it 100 miles, you get the mug, the belt, and the belt buckle. The logo is so sweet. Ash Walsh, who did my logo, the Running His Life logo, she did the race logo for this. So really sweet thing. And then on top of that, after you finish, you're going to get a hoodie in the mail that has your name and the distance you covered. So lots with this race. We're trying to not make it all about the kids. We want you to get something out of this event and have fun as well. It's a great facility. It will be on the track. Lots of information online. So if you can come, we certainly appreciate it. From the program, from myself, from the kids, we really do appreciate you considering coming out for this event, whether you volunteer or whether you come out to run, and whatever distance that may be. If this is, just trying to, dip your toe into the 50K water, this is a great option. It's a safe place to run. You could even start later if you wanted to run 50K and run through the night. We're going to have lights on, the track lights. So make this whatever, you want of this event. The kids will be out there running as well. So we hope you can make it. So check out Flight of the Falcon on Ultra Sign Up, and we hope you can attend. That's all the biggest things that are going on right now. I'm sure there's 100 other things, it seems like, at this time of year, but those are the big things. As always, I want to thank you for being a part of this podcast, for listening to this podcast, for sharing the podcast, for being a Patreon supporter. If you want to support the podcast in that way as a Patreon supporter, the link is in the show notes. If you want information on my coaching, please head over to my website, runningislife.run. That's in the show notes as well. I want to thank everybody once again, and until next time, keep moving forward, my friends. Running is life.